Hi, I'm Lucia Cifarelli. I'm a solo recording artist, and I am the female frontwoman of KMFDM, and you are listening to We Go to 11. My new album, No God Here, is out now, so please check it out.
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
We caught up last go round, new KMFDM album that you guys were on, promoting the North American tour. So just a quick update on that. How did the tour go? And
It,
go ahead.
it was great. It was great. It was very short, 2 weeks, probably a little bit, maybe a little bit more. Normally, we're out there a lot longer.
Mhm.
And it was crazy, it was like a freight train just moving through
Right.
this America. And fans really responded well to the mix of old and new material. So it was great.
Nice, nice. Solo album. So I guess the first thing that caught my attention, No God Here's the name of the album, the artwork. Now the artwork, a bunch of scattered dead bees on what appears to be like a floor or something. So let's start with the artwork first, because I think there's a significance with the bees. I know I've often heard that, if the bees are gone, we're kind of toast.
Well, you're on to something, but you have the insect wrong. It's
Oh,
actually it's actually wasps.
wasps. Okay.
Yes. Yes. So I was kind of channeling the
Okay.
wasp spirit animal. Well, the thing is that when I wrote No God Here, I was thinking about how, people pollute religion in society and in politics, and they use it as a weapon to manipulate people. I mean, in the best sense of the word, religion is a beautiful thing if that is what you need in your life, to direct you and keep you, your moral compass in check. But more often than not, we see that it's weaponized.
Right.
And it happens in families and society. And I when I was thinking about the wasps and the artwork of the whole thing, I was thinking even the smallest among us,
Hmm.
it's a metaphor. The
Right.
the wasps are a metaphor for um, it's usually the ones who are um, poor
Mm.
or alienated or disenfranchised that are overlooked or treated badly. And the wasps were a metaphor for that because they are considered to be, the bad guys of the insect world, right?
Right. Okay. So now that makes a lot more sense then, as far as why the wasps and yeah, the story behind.
But
Oh,
but
go
but
ahead.
they're also, the wasps represent, if you are a spiritually inclined person or esoteric, uh, they are powerful warrior totems,
Mhm.
um, spirit animals. And so I wanted to honor that message in there, tie it together, and I
Yeah.
drape them in gold leaf to represent the gold inside of all of us, and that even the smallest among us are valuable.
Hmm. Right. Uh, Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to pose the question, but pretty intense emotional record. I think towards the middle it gets a little bit upbeat, and then it slips back into the intensity. But I do like how you closed the record out with the creeps. I mean, but tell me about how you played around with the sequencing, because sequencing is everything. I think with albums when you're presenting it, to the fans and stuff.
Yeah, it was tricky. because of the Creeps, because of the last song
Yeah.
on the album.
Right.
If that song wasn't on the album, it would have been a much easier album to sequence.
Mm.
But because it's so different from everything else on the album,
Right.
the question was, where do we put it?
Yeah.
And, I had my own ideas on which should be, I knew pretty much the first 3, 4 songs, I knew how I wanted it to go. And then things were getting confusing for me. I wasn't so sure. And then I let Sasha run a bunch of sequences by that he had in mind. And actually, in the end, it was a combination of mine, Sasha's, and a friend of mine who had been championing me through the whole process. And his was really perfect. It had the ones I wanted at the front. And then when we had Creeps at the end, it just was like, yeah, that's the finish right
Mhm.
there. And also, I wanted to take the listener on a journey, an emotional journey of how the album begins, and the roller coaster of emotions, and how we're through our lives, we're feeling hopeful and inspired, but at other times we're completely broken and down and just lost in the mire of disappointments and things like that. And then it picks you back up. And hopefully, by the time you get to the end of it, you're laughing
Yeah.
and inspired, and you're like, yeah, I get it.
Right. I mean, I think the 3 tunes at the beginning, I mean, again, they do set up the record, which I think that's the challenge. I think oftentimes is getting that sequencing right, because I think you play around with
Oh,
that
yeah.
too much, it'll probably have, and, I think you would agree in this day and age. I think it seems like people are all about singles and listening to a tune versus an entire record and stuff like that. But yeah, the 1, 2, 3 punch that you have on there, with Paper Tiger, it kicking things off, and then Dark Horses. A little bit about the Paper Tiger. I think that the inclusion of the acoustic stuff. I think there's some slide guitar on there, if I'm
Yes.
correct.
Yes,
I
there
mean, the
is.
combination of that and the electronic stuff, I mean, it just all works. And then Dark Horses, if it was a hard rock tune, that groove would be massive,
Yeah.
that's playing behind that. And then and No God Here, I think the lyrical content of that, where you talk about, covered in paper cuts and bleach, I mean, like, ouch, you know.
Well, I mean, I love being descriptive in my songwriting, and I see that as integral to the song, because um I want people to invest themselves in the stories that I'm telling, and for it to really, for them to feel it. So I'm glad that you connected with it.
Right. Would it be a stretch to consider this a concept record? I mean, in the beginning here, when we started talking, you were talking about the kind of the themes throughout and stuff like that. I mean, is this kind of a loose concept record? How would you describe it?
It's funny that you say that, because I never thought of that before. I never thought of it as a concept record, but um, you know, if the shoe fits, maybe it is. Maybe it is a concept record. I'm not so sure what the definition of that would be. I mean, when I made the artwork for the album, I was in the midst of recording No God Here, the first single. And that really set up the vision for the messaging of the record that spoke
Mhm.
to me. And, it's about the underdog, the underrepresented, um, and the fighting spirit to keep pushing forward in life despite, the punches that
Mhm.
that you take, and just being brought down. So if that's the concept, um, maybe,
Yeah. Uh,
maybe.
And then Lights Out. I mean, that's obviously about the school violence, school shootings and stuff like that. I mean, how how do you approach that one? Because that, and it's pretty emotional, pretty touchy. I think anytime kids are harmed, it's always kind of like a punch to the gut for the communities that and the country too.
Yeah. Um, I wasn't sure that I wanted to touch that theme, to be quite honest, for the obvious reasons. And actually, my friend Jim, who I mentioned previously, who had help with the sequencing, he he suggested it. I mean, I had over the course of writing the record, my daughter was in a lockdown at her school here in Hamburg, and it was terrifying. It was an all-day ordeal with helicopters and all sorts of, military and policemen, and it was hardcore. And at the end of the day, it didn't turn out to be actual guns that the kids had, but the fear and the reaction was real all the same for everybody who was experiencing it. So after that happened, and then with the KMFDM association, when he suggested it, I thought, well, maybe I could do it if I could write it in a way that um, spoke to how I really feel about it, you know?
Right.
And I'm glad that I did it, because I think a lot of people who don't know of KMFDM and the association, and then learn about us through that in the news, it gives them this idea that we're certain kinds of people that perhaps promote that sort of activity, which we don't.
Right.
But like a clown in a circus, right? Who was supposed to be this happy character that
Hmm.
kids would encounter and love, was turned into into horror character, right? And so
Right.
we can never see a clown the same way.
Right.
So that's sort of like what's happened to KMFDM, because KMFDM has been associated with these school shootings. There's an
Right.
association that we just can't shake.
Right. And
You know?
what does that do? I mean, I think as an artist, I mean, because like you said, associations happen, sometimes just because, somebody's into a particular type of something, right? In this case, music and stuff. Um, does that, what does that do to you guys as artists as far as, I mean, do you step back? What do you do? I mean, I think that it's unfortunate that sometimes these kinds of things kind of have this domino effect where like, well, maybe we shouldn't do that.
Okay, we're artists,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you were to talk to a painter or a filmmaker or an author, and if somebody acted out something that they saw in a movie, read in a book, or felt about a piece of art hanging in a gallery, do you think any of those people would say, I'm going to change my form of expression because somebody had mental health issues and took it wrong? No. I don't feel that that would be honoring the craft of what we do.
Right.
Censoring ourselves would just make us less of an artist, right?
Mm-hmm.
There, KMFDM has touched on all sorts of subject matter that perhaps are taboo to the mainstream, but I think a lot of these messages are not to be taken so literally. They're supposed to be ironic and fun, and sometimes they're dark and heavy, and they connect with people on a real cerebral sensory level. But that's what we want as artists. And if you're mentally healthy, you listen to it and it makes you feel things, but it doesn't make you act them out.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I does it make me personally, I can't speak for Sasha, but does it make me personally feel like I want to change the things that I talk to? I can tell you this, that when he presents me with something to write to, the first thing that happens to me is I feel the music. I can feel it hit me, and it immediately sparks a feeling. And, you know, that feeling opens up a doorway to a story. And I try to honor that story without censoring it, like a filmmaker would make a movie. I see songs as little movies, little tiny stories. And I don't know what would happen to me if in the process I shut myself down and said, no, I don't want to go there because somebody might take it the wrong way. Art is supposed to make you feel uncomfortable. If it doesn't make you feel something, if it doesn't make you think something, then it's just watered down bullshit. And that's not really what I have to offer. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Can you give me the backstory on the tune Valhalla?
I've actually I don't think I've ever told this story before. A friend of mine had a daughter who became her son, and some things happened to him during his transition, and he contemplated or attempted suicide a couple of times. And I had heard this story while I was out on the road a couple of years ago, not a couple of years ago, but before I started on a tour, before I started writing the record. And I kind of took that in. And then I started thinking about moments in my life where I have felt like I didn't want to live anymore, and moments where I have just wanted to give up. And like a tapestry, I just pulled ideas from what happened to him and expressed how I feel about certain things at certain times and wrote the song. One of my best friends is a psychologist, and she tells me all the time that it's not unusual for people to feel this way from time to time. So I know that I'm not in
Right.
any danger.
Right.
But I was quite touched by the story about my friend's son and his journey while transitioning. And yeah, so I just tried to express what he was feeling. And yeah, it's
Nice.
about suicide,
Right.
obviously.
Right. Right. Okay. I kind of made that connection. I just was trying to, sometimes, there is the song is created and there is no backstory necessarily for it, but I was just curious about that one.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very, very heartbreaking story. Not everybody's journey is seamless. When you're, in his case, he went through a lot of traumatizing encounters and situations. And, in my case, the moments where I felt that way, there's this perception that because I'm in this pretty successful band and I'm able to tour and do what I love, that everything is just perfect, right?
Right.
But it's not always that way.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah. I mean, some people are pretty good about putting up that front, and they look like they're doing well, and but the reality is you don't know what they're battling in their heads, right?
well, life is like waves. It's not perfect for any of us. We're all going through our own existential stuff. So,
Right.
you
Right.
know,
Right.
but I think it's a song a lot of people can connect to and identify with.
Right. And what is the game plan as far as any live performances of any of this stuff on this record at some point down the way? I don't know what the status is with any KMFDM material or anything.
Well, I was able to perform The Creeps out on the last tour, which was a lot of fun.
Hmm.
People responded to it really well, and I was able to perform No God before that.
Mm.
And I'm hoping to perform perhaps another track off the album when we go out on tour in the fall. I would love to be able to tour with this album. It's just,
Hmm.
I have to figure out a way to connect those dots, which,
Right.
I'm doing press and I'm making videos and I'm wearing like a lot of different hats. And the one aspect that I haven't been able to figure out yet is how I would be able to fund that if I was able
Right.
to get on a tour, because that's a pretty expensive
Sure.
undertaking. So, yeah, I got
I
to
mean,
be able to figure that part out.
right. I know one of the things that was huge during the pandemic was people doing like live performances and streaming it, like from a studio or something like that. I
That's a
mean,
great idea.
I mean, is that something well, I was going to say, has that crossed your mind? It sounds, I don't know. Maybe it has, maybe it hasn't. I don't know.
Well, you know what? I hadn't actually considered that. Maybe I should. Maybe I could do a concert right in my own house and stream
Yeah.
it. That's a great idea.
Play the album top to bottom. I mean, yeah. I mean, I was aware of the Creeps for sure being performed, but I wasn't quite sure whether there was a plan to do anything off the record. They play the entire record or whatever.
I know. I would love to. And I'm trying to figure that out. I'm rattling my brain trying to figure out ways to keep the album alive and move it forward. But it's been a little bit challenging. I don't have a team around me to
Hmm.
conceptualize how to make these things happen. So I'm chopping away at it and talking to friends, and hopefully little by little I'll be able to find a way to get out there and bring it to a live environment, because I love the album and I think it would translate really well.
Right. No, it would. I think you do the right setting, it'll go over pretty well. I think it's got that ups and downs, and I think the Creeps again. I can't say enough about that one closing out the record, because I think even from top to bottom, where you set it up with Paper Tiger and then ended with the Creeps, I think it flowed very well.
I'm so glad you liked it. So what was your favorite song on the record?
My favorite song? Well, I like the Creeps, but I lean towards Dark Horses, and I think in part it's because of that the beats, the groove behind it. I think that
Mhm.
really caught my attention. I think the lyrical content, obviously, of "No God Here," like I said, that line where you talk about covered in paper cuts and bleach, and then you get a really descriptive. I'm like, wow, you can almost feel that. You know?
Yeah, well, I do. I feel that in my heart. I
Right.
mean, I feel all the lyrics I write passionately, but that one especially, because it was the first one that I wrote that I felt
Hmm.
was going to drive the record.
Right.
So
Nice.
I'm glad.
Do you have a particular favorite, or is it one of those things where, maybe you can't pick one, but if you had to go with one, which would it be, you think? If you had to say, hey, this is the song I want you guys to check out because, I think it kind of defines of where you're at and what this record's all about.
Well, it changes all the time. I do I take a beat and give the record a
Right.
rest and I revisit it. And I love all the songs so much, and I'm really proud of that, because there's so few albums that I can listen to from top to bottom and say, oh, that one I can skip over it. So I'm really happy that I can listen to my own record and feel that I can listen to it all the way through without skipping over. But if I had to pick one song, um, yeah, I guess it probably would be No God Here.
Yeah. I mean, you
I
can't
think
go
it would
wrong
be.
with that one, I think, lyrically and then just the overall composition of the whole thing. I think that and the Creeps, again, the Creeps and
With
Dark
the
Horses.
Creeps, did you see the video I made
Yeah,
for
I
the
did see the
Creeps?
video
It's
for
pretty
that.
funny.
Yeah, it is. I like
I
that.
had a lot of fun with that.
But we'll post the link to your social media stuff. That way people can check it out, because I think they'll enjoy it. I think even if they're not a fan of KMFDM, I think there's something on this record for everybody, I think.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Even guys that are into stuff on the heavier side, I'm mostly a metal type
I
guy, but
know.
also into hard rock, blues, and I think the other thing I want to throw out about Dark Horses, that was a good spin, is just the soulfulness to it. I think that really worked well with that groove behind it.
Well, that was Sasha's vision. He really knew where that song needed to go, and he fell in love with it when I played it for him, and he just ran with all these ideas. And every time I walked out of the room and came back in, it was just getting brought to life more and more. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. And it's funny that you choose Dark Horse, because a couple of other folks that I've done podcasts with that are also like heavy metal guys,
Yeah.
they like that song a lot.
But you know what it is? I think when you think of the Dark Horse, I think, again, I go back to the groove, because I think that really connects with people that are into the harder, heavier music. You add distorted guitars and a bass and that drum and a heavy metal drum beat, and I think that's like a thrash song. It's like a groove metal song. Well, I almost think like a Pantera type thing.
Well, maybe we do a remix like that.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think you could definitely pull that off. I think, yeah, I'd be curious to hear something like that.
Okay.
I'll look in. So the one thing in wrapping up, this will be for We Go to 11. Can you think of this past North American tour? I know you guys were out for a couple weeks. Was there any Spinal Tap type moment that you can share during this past North American tour of 20?
Oh, there were plenty. There were plenty. I just don't know that I could publicly.
Oh, is there a sanitized version of one?
Oh God. There were so many Spinal Tap moments. The real one that I want to tell you, it would be so wrong. Well, okay. We underestimated certain aspects of what we were going to need. So we needed to bring somebody else out on tour. It was somebody that we didn't know that was recommended. And their reaction to being on the tour was very Spinal Tap, in that they behaved in a way that was so over the top and so, there's this idea, I guess, if you're not really experienced in touring, you have all these ideas about what it's like with groupies and, partying and everything that you would imagine from what it would be like to go on tour. He wanted to live out. So he was so over the top that he, female bartenders didn't even want to serve him, because he was just like, yeah, do you know who I am?
Oh.
That kind of thing, trying everything out at every moment. And that was pretty over the top. And, it's hard to know how to handle somebody like that, because you need them.
Right.
You don't want them to go off the rails. And at the same time, you're like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing.
Right.
He was crazy. And then other things like, I busted my knee. That's not really a Spinal Tap moment, but that was pretty crazy, because My knee was like this big
Oh,
about 5 days before we went out on the tour, and I was performing with a brace on my knee for
Mhm.
several dates and just trying to navigate how to be myself on stage with this bad knee.
right.
And of course, I was doing my Kickstarter at the same time that we were doing this tour. So as we were rehearsing, I'm boxing up
Right.
vinyl and
Right.
CDs, and I'm trying to get everything carried to the
Mhm.
post office and just juggling that with rehearsing. And it was just like wild. It was the craziest 2 weeks that I've ever experienced on tour. And we usually are out there like for a month at
Right.
least. It just felt like it was a full tour. But the people responded to it really well.
Right.
And we're gonna continue with it. I think we're
Nice.
gonna do an extension of that in the fall on the West Coast.
Wow.
So you
Nice.
you have
Yeah, there you
fall.
go. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I love keeping in touch with you. You know, for whatever reason you want to keep in touch with me, and I'm cool with that because I think it's something outside the box for me as far as music. And I really enjoy it. So I think that's also that's a plus. That's plus
Well,
plus
thanks
for
for
me.
having me.
Maybe not a plus for you, plus for me.
Well, it
But
is. I reached out to you.
that's right. So yeah, and I am on the West Coast. So yeah, definitely, for sure, we'll be out there. Hey, thank you so much. It's a blast talking to you. Love the record, and again, great stories on some of those tunes and stuff.
Thank you, Ruben. And I hope we see you on the West Coast when
Oh,
we're
for
out there in
sure.
the fall.
That'd be
I'll
awesome,
reach
wouldn't
out
it?
to you.
Yes, definitely do that. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.
All
Take
right.
care.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.